r/AskReddit Doctors of Reddit, what's your thank God they came in for a second opinion moment? You honestly lose track over the years. Seems like with every patient the more attention you pay the more unsorted/missed things you find. Heart failure that is actually pneumonia. Oh look, that elective surgery patient, nobody has listened to the chest of sounds like she has aortic stenosis. No, it's not usual for your potassium to be 2.4. You have a problem with your kidneys and we should do something about that. I don't think Reddit has a word count large enough. My dad went to the same ear doctor for around 9 years due to poor hearing, and was told there was nothing wrong. When he finally went to a second doctor, they referred him to the hospital and found tumors in his ears that had eaten entirely through his inner ear bones and eardrums. He needed 4 ops to remove them, 1 every 6 months. If the second doctor hadn't offered their opinion, he would probably have had tumors eating through the back of his skull into his brain. My wife was the patient. December 24th, about 4:00 p.m., she has abdominal pain. After a while, to ER. Doctor says it's just flu. Wife says that it isn't. Don't recall exact sequence of events. I think that there was an ultrasound at one point which showed inflamed appendix. They wanted to watch her, she stayed in overnight. It ruptured during the night. She had appendectomy for Christmas present. Followed by E. coli. She was sick till end of February. I was chatting to one of my patients recently and she told me she'd just been diagnosed with skin cancer on her leg. She'd been going to see her GP about it for months and he'd been treating her for eczema and prescribing copious different creams which obviously weren't working, hence she kept going back. Then one appointment her regular GP was off sick, so she saw a locum doctor and he sent her for a biopsy, and turns out it's skin cancer. Late response but still. Last year April I managed to get a bamboo stick in my hand. Had it removed in the ambulance and the doc said nothing to worry about. Less than 2 weeks later my hand was twice its size, so we go back to the doctor and he says it's perfectly normal. Next day I feel terrible and almost puked my bed under. My mom decided to go to the ER and my hand was obviously infected and I was at the begging of blood infection. I almost died that week. Not a doctor, but I went to the ER for a hernia. I was rolling around on the floor in the waiting room from the intense pain when a doctor came out of one of the rooms. He comes up to me and criticizes me for causing a show. He then reaches out to touch my abdomen and tells me that I have nothing wrong with me. I told him to frick off and walked into the room regardless and had one of his buddies check me out. Not even 2 hours later and I was in the operating room. Not a doctor, but here's my girlfriend's experience. Went to the ER for extreme localized abdominal pain. They told her it was gas and to go home and ignore it. Pain kept getting worse, had to go back to the ER. It was appendicitis. The doctors didn't think it was serious, so they took forever getting her back and it burst before they removed it. She ended up nearly still dying and being hospitalized for like 2 weeks. But you know, just gas apparently. Was the patient, was being pulled on a floaty device behind a boat and got flung off and hit my ear. Last day, last few hours, 5-hour drive back, I'm whimpering in pain, get home and we try to eardrop wash it and it feels like a screwdriver went into my ear. We originally went to the ER and they said oh it's just an infection, gave me antibiotics and sent me home. Went to regular doctor in the morning and he looked and found a hole in my eardrum. Not a doctor, but my sister is deaf. She lost her hearing due to meningitis. My parents went to get her tested for it because she had the symptoms. They were shot down immediately and treated like idiots. They were told that people with meningitis would have seizures, which were late stage and could kill. I don't know all the details, but I'm pretty sure they went to another hospital not long after and ended up putting my 2Y/O sister in the ER. Not a doctor but a patient. At the end of last year I had sinusitis and went to the doctor. When it was getting better, My neck ganglions started swelling up, but the doctor said it would go down by itself. After the second time she told me that, I went for a second opinion. 3 months and a million tests later, turns out I had stage 2 Hodgkin's lymphoma. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I just believed that first doctor and waited it out. Hi there, sorry, just wanted to ask a question as my own grandmother has had a hip replaced due to arthritis over a year ago and is still in a lot of pain. She describes the pain as being basically the same as before, radiating to her groin, but also still extremely tender over the surgical scar. She has had an X-ray and been told it is all clear. She's very depressed due to her chronic pain. May I ask how the doctor was able to tell that some of the bone around the joint was infected? Thank you. Mom went to a hospital near us for a headache which was really troubling her, and the first hospital said that it was severe migraines. Wrong. Turns out she had a brain hemorrhage and she almost died if it weren't for my uncle letting her see a specialist. Lesson to learn: always get a second opinion because sometimes essential things can be overlooked. Edit: I read the question wrong. I am not a medical professional, but this is my mom's story. Never to the point of thank God, but I often reevaluate cases for a second opinion. I've changed the diagnosis on cough, chest pain, cause of blood clot, etc. The problem is the American healthcare system does not really support this type of endeavor. I get reimbursed for a 20-minute visit, but in reality need to spend over 60 minutes with the patient and another 2 to 3 hours thinking about the case after. It is a bit frustrating sometimes. I'm not a doctor, but my GFS grandmother slipped and fell when it was snowy out. She was in really bad pain, so she went to the hospital where they told her she just bruised something. She was sure it was something more serious. She went to Johns Hopkins and they found out her appendix had burst and it was leaking into her body. She had to go straight into surgery and they told her it's possible if she waited another day or 2 she might have died. Not a doctor yet, but I am planning to be. During one of our classes in freshman year, our teachers were letting us practice with stethoscopes. Me and my good friend decided to listen to our hearts together, and I couldn't help but notice how odd hers was. It was sort of scratchy, but when I mentioned it to my professor she just brushed it off. My friend, out of slight curiosity and perhaps fear, went to a cardiologist, and it turns out she had a heart murmur. Not a doctor. When I had my son, I was having extreme upper chest/back pain, vomiting, and spotty vision. Was told to get a back brace and deal with it. One night it got so bad, I went to ER and AMP. I was right in between a shift change. Both doctors decided to stay and help me. Found out that I developed eclampsia, and after the baby was taken out, developed HELLP syndrome. Nearly died. Little guy was 4 lbs when he went home. I was in for a very long time. Now he's 7. I am not a doctor, but I sort of work in the medical field, scheduling desk for a group of clinics. The doctors want us to get details of what the patients are coming in for, and if they've been seen elsewhere for the issue. No less than 4 times I've had parents who have called about their infants, under a year old, having fallen more than 2 feet onto their heads and asking if they should come in for an appointment only after it was suggested by a friend. Back in high school, this guy on the football team got into an ATV accident and went to our town's hospital, which has since gained a reputation for misdiagnosing. I can't remember details, but they said one thing had happened to his leg when it was actually another. That another thing eventually led to a permanent injury. He had a scholarship at a school for football, but couldn't go because now he walks with a limp and will forever. He sued the hospital for a lot of money and won. Obligatory. Not a doctor, but when I was shot, they wanted to run me through an MRI. My pediatrician, the guy who did most of the work stitching my insides back together, had an absolute shat hemorrhage at that, because you get probably 100 steel 12-gauge birdshot pellets inside a kid's body and then stick that kid in the center of a giant frick-off electromagnet. Not only would you have a right mess to clean up, you'd also have a dead kid and a serious malpractice lawsuit. This is a "I wish I had gotten a second opinion" story. I had a doctor in high school who was unconcerned when I suddenly developed vertical double vision, which was freaking out everyone in emergency, where I had gone initially, and lost 60 lbs for no reason. It was only a year or two later when I told him that my arm would fall asleep much faster than normal when I raised it to ask a question in class that he thought there might be something wrong with me. MRI ordered. Brain tumor found. Not a drive but. When I was diagnosed with T1 diabetes at age 2, a few days after being in hospital, the nurse was about to give me an insulin injection. She dialed up 20 units instead of the needed 2 units. This 10x dose would have probably killed 2-year-old me had my dad not grabbed the injection pen and insisted she rechecks her calculations. He didn't even know how to calculate insulin dosages back then, but just noticed it looked way too dialed up to be normal. I'm not a doctor, but I had a fall and went to the emergency room complaining that my arm and back hurt. X-ray, fractured wrist. Cool, now what about my back? Doctor feels around my back and says, knots and tight muscles mate, get a massage, it'll help. I wasn't gonna waste money on a massage, and went to my GP a bit of a while later and complained the pain was just getting worse. She ordered scans of my back. Turns out I'd fractured a part of my spine in the fall, too. Thanks for watching this auto-generated video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. I upload videos like this one daily. I put a lot of time into developing this video generator, but if there have been errors, please tell me in the comments below. Also leave me a link to another thread you would like to see a video about. Have a great day, Alex.